Now, there's a big focus on the royals at the moment, with Prince Philip in hospital, aged 99, and suggestions that family are visiting for what could be their departing moments. We don't really know, and of course we wish him all the best. Reports today focused on the line that the Prince is disappointed with his grandson, Prince Harry, for effectively leaving the royal family, leaving royal duties and escaping to the US. This comes as Harry and Meghan prepare for a major television interview with Oprah Winfrey for God knows how many pieces of silver. Now, there's a lot of support for Prince Philip's view. Here's a man who's shown devotion to his duty. His wife, the Queen, has been the very model of duty, dignity and discretion throughout her long career, and people reckon Harry should, of course, do the same. Well, if you're a monarchist, that's fair enough, I suppose. It's a hell of a responsibility to impose on someone just by dint of their birth, but that's the system. But I'm a Republican, and not because of some jingoistic attitude that says, you know, we've got to have a head of state that should be one of us, or because I loathe the British or any of that. None of that red bandana man stuff really appeals to me. I oppose the monarchy because government and democracy should be based on merit, and people should not be born into power. People should be born equal. We should not perpetuate a system where some of us are born into democratic superiority. Now, many of you will disagree, I know, I respect your point of view, but given this is what I profess, given this is the rationale that underpins my view, then it would be very, very wrong and hypocritical for me to say that Harry should be condemned to live this life. He shouldn't be born into subservience any more than he should be born into superiority. So as silly as he and Meghan might be, preaching every woke cause and seeking a celebrity lifestyle, I do admire them a bit for breaking free. They've got to have the right to do that. The thing is, they should find honest work. Selling your royal celebrity is kind of having your cake and eating it too. Meghan's an actress. I'm certain she could get a role or two. And Harry served his country at war. We respect him for that, and he's no mug. He ought to be able to get a real job. Now, the British Prime Minister says the country is travelling on a one-way road to freedom, as he's announced plans to gradually lift England's lockdown.
Today was about waving goodbye to lockdown.
Is this plan going to cost more jobs?
But it will be June before we get there. The Prime Minister explaining to the nation an approach he calls cautious but irreversible.
The threat remains substantial. We cannot escape the fact that lifting lockdown will result in more cases, more hospitalisations and, sadly, more deaths. There is therefore no credible route to a zero-COVID Britain or indeed a zero-COVID world.
Let's go to our friend in lockdown in London, Brendan O'Neill, the editor of Spiked Online. Good to speak to you again, Brendan. Is this plan moving fast enough?
Not in my view, no. I think it's far too slow. We're not going to be out of lockdown until the 21st of June. And when you put that into context, that means we've been in one lockdown or another for more than a year. We first went into lockdown last March. So what was presented to us as a 3-week lockdown to flatten the curve has become almost an 18-month lockdown, which has destroyed the economy, destroyed civil liberties, and caused a huge amount of despair across the country. The thing is, I think the problem is that government now seems to think that its role is to protect us from everything, to protect us even from mild illness. We have got a hugely successful vaccination program here. Millions upon millions of people have been vaccinated, including the elderly and the vulnerable. The kind of people who were dying from COVID are now protected from COVID. In my view, that means we should start opening up quite quickly, because it's not the government's job to protect us from all risks, including the risk of what will eventually be a mild illness.
Obviously, you're facing a difficult situation in the UK. It's still winter and the virus has been running rampant. But this, to me, seems the key point. The risks of serious illness and mortality from COVID is so minimal for anybody who doesn't have a comorbidity or is not over 70. Once you've got all those people vaccinated, you should be able to lift these restrictions very, very quickly.
That's right. I think Boris is right to say that you know, there's no prospect of zero COVID. And I think the zero COVID lobby are crazy, actually. You know, this idea that you can eliminate a virus which has now joined the family of human diseases, whether we like it or not. You know, we can't just live in limbo until this virus has been eliminated. That's impossible. That would be psychotic, in my view. You know, we can't live in a zero-risk society. Life is full of risk. Freedom itself is risky. You know, the great thing about being free is that we can make our own choices, we can go out and about, we can do pretty much what we want to do within reason, and that involves risks. You know, there's always the risk you will be hurt in a relationship, or you will get hit by a car, or you might get ill. These are the risks we've always accepted, and these are the risks we've always faced up to. So we can't eliminate risk, and it's not the government's job to do that. I would rather live in a free society that had lots of risks in it, rather than in an unfree society in which I was protected from risk, such as the risk of COVID, by the government.
And it's about proportionality too. When you think of the millions of people affected by tuberculosis and malaria in the developing world every year, if we put half the resources we've put into COVID into those diseases, we would save probably tens of thousands of lives.
That's right. And I think that's a really important point. You know, there are huge numbers of diseases which kill very poor people all the time. But we've become so COVID focused, we've become so obsessed with COVID disproportionately in a global context that we're losing sight of those things. And I think once we're back on the straight and narrow, once we've got over the pandemic, we really do need to start getting our priorities right, both in terms of tackling disease, of course, but also restoring liberty and restoring the economy.
Spot on. Very quickly, two big issues while I've got you there. Meghan and Harry, they should be free to live the life they're leading?
They should be free to do whatever they want to do. The rest of us should be free, of course, to criticise them for constantly wagging their fingers at us about how to live woke, green lives while they're jetting around the world. But like you, I'm a Republican. I would rather that Britain did not have a monarchy. But I find myself admiring the Queen more and more with every passing day, because she has lived a life of service. She has devoted herself to this country. And I think that's why a lot of people in Britain are a bit annoyed with Harry and Meghan, because they see them as quite flighty. They see them as insulting the Queen. So a lot of Brits at the moment are not fond of the Prince and Princess of wokeness.
Yeah, no, well said. I find myself in furious agreement with you on that. Now, also, I highlighted yesterday how the Merseyside police are actually out and about with placards advertising the fact that offensiveness is an offence, and really appealing for people to come to them with cases of verbal hate crimes. Where does this take us in the end?
It's terrifying. It's like something from a dystopian novel. You know, you have the police there looking very menacing as they warn people not to be offensive, not to say anything that is un-PC or which might upset certain groups in society. It's a terrifying image, and I'm glad that people were shocked by it. They should be shocked by it. The police in this country have become almost like the armed wing of political correctness. They are constantly sending out these messages about how terrible offensive speech is. Recently, the police visited a man at his house because he posted a poem online which was critical of transgenderism. We've had people arrested for telling offensive jokes. You know, this is a serious crisis of freedom of speech. And my view is that the police should have no role whatsoever in telling us what we're allowed to say or what jokes we're allowed to make. We've got to get real about freedom of speech and tell the police to investigate crime rather than investigate people's thoughts.
Thanks for getting up so early for us again, Brendan. Let's hope you're out of lockdown soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Brendan O'Neill also always talking common sense, rare common sense from London for us. Let's hope they can get out of lockdown as soon as possible.